There's an entire world living inside of us, totally invisible to the naked eye. And while some of these microscopic creatures are helpful, others, well, they're not so friendly. They're more like silent invaders, just waiting for their chance.
So what if I told you that one of these invaders is so clever it can basically wear a disguise, build its own armor, and then tear through your body's tissues with a whole toolkit of molecular weapons? Sounds like science fiction, right? Well, it's not. This thing is very real.
We're talking about an amoeba, a tiny single-celled organism called Entamoeba histolytica. And don't let its size fool you. This thing is a master of survival and destruction, and it's the culprit behind a really nasty disease called amoebiasis.
And the stakes here are incredibly high. We're talking about an estimated 100,000 deaths every single year, all around the world, caused by this one parasite. It's a huge problem, especially in places with poor sanitation.
All right, so let's get a closer look at this thing. What exactly is it? Well, we're diving into the microscopic world here. E. histolytica is part of a group of single-celled organisms known as protozoa.
Okay, so this amoeba has a really clever two-part survival strategy. It has two different forms. First, you've got the cyst. Think of it like a tiny armored seed. It's dormant, it's tough, and it's built to survive out in the harsh world. But once it gets inside a host, like you or me, it transforms. It becomes the trophozoite. This is the active, moving, hungry stage that causes all the trouble.
And just to make things even trickier, N. histolytica has an identical twin. It's called Entamoeba dispar. And when I say identical, I mean they look exactly the same under a microscope. But here's the catch. One is a dangerous invader, and the other is totally harmless, just a quiet passenger in our gut. Now, this isn't just a fun fact for a biology test. It's a huge problem for public health. Why? Because you might end up treating someone for the dangerous one when they have the harmless twin. Or, even worse, you might miss the dangerous one entirely, delaying crucial treatment. It makes trying to track where this killer amoeba is spreading a real nightmare.
So, the big question is, how does this invader actually get inside us to launch its attack? Well, the secret is all in that dormant cyst form. It's basically a microscopic Trojan horse.
Okay, let's walk through its journey. It all starts when a person swallows a cyst, usually from contaminated food or water. That tough little wall protects it from our brutal stomach acid. Then, once it's safely in the small intestine, it hatches, and out come the active trophozoites. These are the invaders. They make their way to the large intestine, multiply, and start their attack on the colon wall. And to complete the cycle, they transform back into those tough cysts, get passed out of the body, and are now ready to infect someone new.
So if there's one thing to remember, it's this. The cyst is the infective stage, the thing that gets the parasite in. But it's the trophozoite that's the invasive stage, the one that actually causes the disease. You can think of it like this. One is the delivery truck, and the other is the wrecking ball inside.
All right, now for the main event. Once those trophozoites are active in your large intestine, how do they do so much damage? Well, they don't come empty-handed. They're equipped with a whole arsenal of sophisticated biological weapons.
Let's break down its toolkit, its four-step attack plan. First, it uses these, let's call them molecular hooks, to grab onto the cells lining your intestine. Once it's latched on, step 2. It deploys these special proteins that are like tiny little drills punching holes in your cells and killing them. Step 3. It releases enzymes that are basically biological solvents, dissolving the very matrix that holds your tissues together. And as if that's not enough, for its final trick, it shreds your immune system's antibodies, basically giving itself an invisibility cloak.
And the result of this brutal step-by-step attack? It creates these really unique ulcers in the intestine. They look like a flask, with a narrow neck and a wide base. They start as a tiny opening on the surface, but then balloon out underneath the tissue. It's a classic telltale sign of this specific parasite.
But the horror story doesn't always end in the gut. Because this parasite is so good at dissolving tissue, it can sometimes break out of the intestine entirely. It gets into the bloodstream and can travel to other parts of the body. And that's when things get really serious.
So, for the people who actually get sick, the symptoms in the gut usually start gradually, maybe over a week or two. We're talking abdominal pain, and the most classic sign, amoebic dysentery, which is a severe, often bloody diarrhea. What's kind of strange is that unlike a lot of infections, a fever isn't very common. But here's the really scary part. Having these obvious symptoms is actually the exception, not the rule.
That's right. The vast majority of people who get infected with this thing, they show no symptoms whatsoever. They become silent carriers. They feel totally fine,
but they're walking around shedding millions of these infectious cysts, spreading the parasite to other people without even knowing it.
Now, in a small number of these cases, the invasion goes systemic. The trophozoids manage to burrow their way into the blood vessels in the intestinal wall and hitch a ride straight to the liver. And once they get there, they just keep doing what they do best, destroying tissue. This creates a huge, painful collection of pus called an amoebic liver abscess, which is absolutely life-threatening if it's not treated.
Okay, so we know what we're up against. We know how this thing operates. So how do we fight back? How do we spot it? And more importantly, how do we stop it?
Well, diagnosis comes down to catching the culprit red-handed, so to speak. Technicians look for the parasite in a stool sample. And remember that identical twin problem? Here's the key clue that tells them apart. If they see a trophozoite that has actually been eating red blood cells, that's the smoking gun. They know they're dealing with the dangerous E. histolytica.
When it comes to prevention, it's probably not going to surprise you. Just like with so many other infectious diseases, it all comes down to hygiene. The best defenses are the simple ones. Washing your hands really well, especially after using the bathroom and before you handle food. Making sure your water and food are clean, and cooking food thoroughly. Simple steps, but they are absolutely critical for breaking the parasite's life cycle.
And here's something really important to keep in mind. That tough little armored wall on the cyst, it's so resilient that the normal amount of chlorine they put in drinking water often isn't enough to kill it. No way. To be truly safe, you need to boil the water or use a really good filter.
So all of this leaves us with a really big critical question. We're dealing with a parasite that's a master of disguise, right? It has a harmless twin, and it can hide inside of millions of people who have no symptoms at all. So the question is, how can we get better at tracking and fighting an enemy that is quite literally hiding in plain sight?